Welcome to CX&Chill, the real, raw customer experience podcast from XOStudios and XtendOps. Today, your host Stephanie Todd talks with pizza pro Aaron Nilsson, Chief Information and Data Officer at Jet's Pizza and lead contributor to the Domino's delivery app. Tune in as they explore the early days of virtual experiences, building amazing CX with pizza ordering Jetbot, the meaning of greige, and the vital importance of spelling in the digital age of 21 plus content. Enjoy.
My grandparents to a porn site for their first experience with what they thought I built, and God bless them.
Porn right.
Right there.
Like instantly.
Yeah.
You're like the godfather of technology.
Okay, I'm gonna put that on my LinkedIn. We're not doing a ton with VR on that. I mean, we see it, like, we take it for granted that it's out there. At that time, it was a pain in the ass to get accomplished, and you were tons of fiddling with it. And now there's systems like Matterport that just, like, you go in and you hit a button and the whole room is scanned, and it is super. But you know what's weird is that from a customer experience, people aren't using it, and we're not super dependent upon it. I will say that at that time, I assumed that would be all over. If you'd asked me in '95, what would happen in 2023 with a technology like that, I would have just assumed this is what the entire internet is going to be.
Welcome to CX&Chill. I'm your host, Stephanie Todd. I'm here with Aaron Nilsson from Jet's Pizza. You want to give a little background on who you are, Aaron?
Yeah, my name's Aaron Nilsson. I'm a train designer. I've been doing internet stuff since basically when the internet began, which is something that really trips my kids out, that the internet didn't exist at one point. But I've been there since the beginning, and I spent a bunch of time with like General Motors, and then when that was kind of falling apart in '09, I bounced over to Domino's Pizza for 8 years or so. I was at Carhartt for a little bit, Carhartt, the clothing company, and now I'm back as the CIO at Jet's Pizza. I've been there for 4 years.
I always like the Carhartt. I got all the hats and swag, and now it's in style. And my kids, they're like, how did you know what was going to be in style? I'm like, I have friends.
In that way, I've been in style since like kindergarten. I grew up in a farming community where it was like the thing you wore as a like functional thing. Yeah. And now it's all over Instagram. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So people who've never broken a sweat on a day in their life.
I don't even know what Carhartt really means, or what it's really created to have warmth for laborious jobs,
for people doing real work.
Yeah. So starting the internet, and your kids
worn by people who are getting paid to do absolutely nothing. Okay.
Maybe it warms their heart.
Maybe.
So when you say internet started, it blows your kid's mind.
Yeah.
Do you have recollection of the first time you got on the internet?
Yeah,
what that was like?
I was at Michigan State, and I was just struggling to figure out what I wanted to do. I grew up my dad was an artist and a public high school art teacher. And then I got to college. I really didn't know what I was going to do. I had just blown out a shoulder doing some sports stuff, so I wasn't doing some sports stuff. And I was kind of, in hindsight, lucky enough to be next to like the uber nerd that was on my floor. I shared a wall with him, and he's like, oh yeah, well, there's like so much cool stuff going on. He walked me over to the computer store. We bought a computer with money I got for high school graduation.
And what did that computer look like?
It was a tall iMac thing, and all in one. It had that beige gray look that they all had at the time, or greige, I think is the word that they use now. It was just like so hip in the 2000s and in the 2023s, wherever we are. For if you're on TikTok and watch interior design videos, I bought that, and then he taught me how to build my first webpage, and it was awesome. But it was just like a thing locally. And then, and that was just like, I didn't even make the dot connection until I went to an entomology class, saw the Netscape spinning logo, and I'm like, oh my God, there's like a dude out there, a guy, because I'm personalizing the story, who gets to like make this animation. You can do art stuff and computer stuff and have a job and get paid, and it's going to be a big deal. Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah. So I switched everything, started doing that. I talked to an artist friend of mine that did large, primitive, figurative sculptures of like human-like characters. And I built my first webpage, and I was so proud of it. So from my dorm room, called my grandparents, because they were the only other people who had like invested money and gotten on the internet in '95, I think this was.
Your grandparents?
My grandparents, yeah. Grandpa, super tech forward, and always was. You always like just fidget with everything. So yeah, that's not a common statement. That my only other person I knew that had any internet connection with my grandfather. Yeah. And I gave him the web address, chatterly.com. I nervously I had hang the phone, because that was you had to dial. It was back in the modem days. Hang up the phone, waited for like a half hour. I kept calling back like every 5 minutes, I'm like, did you see it? Did you see it? Because it was my first webpage.
Yeah.
And then he calls me back and he's like, is this what you want to do in your life? I'm like, yeah, Grandpa, I think this is going to be a big deal. This is going to be huge. Mm-hmm. He's like, well, all right. I'm putting your grandma on. And my grandma's like, Aaron, okay. And that's all she said. And she handed the phone back to Grandpa. I'm like, well, what'd you see? He's like, well, I'm like, did you see he's got the art and stuff? He's like, well, yeah, I was on that for a little while, and then I went to the storefront. I'm like, there's no storefront. Where were you? He's like, I was on Chatterley.com. I'm like, yeah, Chatterley.com. It's like Chatterley. No, there's no E. If you go to that, it was Lady Chatterley's House of S&M, B&D. I sent my grandparents to a porn site for their first experience with what they thought I built. And God bless them.
Porn right
right there.
Like instantly.
Yeah. It was a very, like, the opening image was like this graphic thing with candle wax and, like, twine ropes and stuff like that. And that's where I sent my grandparents. And I learned a valuable lesson about, like, hey, be really careful with the URLs that you send to anybody, let alone your grandparents.
And how you spell them.
That's right. Maybe.
But that sounds like a very calm response to where you sent them to the website.
Like, it wasn't like a video. Maybe they were like red-faced in person, but they were, all right, cool, like, fine. Okay. I think they were just hoping maybe it was a face. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay,
so then you had the other site, but then as you went through time, how did you get to, because you have the unique mix of art, design, like how did you then go from whatever you built, which would be really interesting to see what that looks like now. Yeah. Do you have that anywhere?
The original one that I built? I got screen captures in my portfolio.
Oh, that's amazing.
The site has been, actually, he's still a friend of mine. Eventually I let my sister take over the site, so I think Chatterley.com with an E is still out there, and my sister manages it, and Mark's a good guy, and I occasionally end up in his studio drinking whiskey, and he gets his friends to ship him stuff from like Korea that you can't get in the United States. Yeah. So makes an afternoon in Mark's studio really fun. Mm-hmm. So that still exists, and I'll send you a picture of the first one. Yeah. It's cool. It looked like an artist palette, so it was very graphical. Yeah, I think I've made a copy of the screen image of every design I've ever had.
That's great. I have captured things, but it's a disorganized mess. Everything probably exists somewhere, but there is not organization to what I have. So yeah, that's nice that you have the forward thought that this is going to be something later that I'm going to need. Yeah.
Oh, I knew I was totally like trying to infuse. We're doing art, and I was still a design student, so I went from entomology to design. Yeah. When I studied bugs, design, nothing to do with bugs. And then I got on a roll of doing, like in those days, if you could spell HTML, you could get a job doing stuff. So I was building websites at Michigan State for the medical school. And then I got the best gig that I got to like infuse art and tech at the same time is I got a job at the Natural History Museum. And the guy who went by the name of Sonny wasn't his real name because he had a long Korean name that he felt people struggled to pronounce, but he's just such a great guy. And he's like, yeah, just go buy all the software. Here's a budget and figure out something cool to do. And that was like such a gift because I got to like be in the driver's seat of figuring out something cool. Yeah. So I bought this like QuickTime virtual reality camera setup, and they had these like little biomes in the museum where it shows like, what it's like to be in the desert, what it's like to be in the Arctic and stuff like that, and did some virtual reality stuff. But it was more that experimentation to get people to engage with the website, and they, there was minimal traffic at the time, but we, probably 10x'd it for overall traffic, got some press, and then got to do some really interesting things like the Michigan Barn Preservation Network, which was basically just like ruin porn of barn images that are like, hey, this is a barn we could fix up. Hey, this is a barn. And they, had tons of barns on there. But it was another like kind of community oriented site.
Sure.
So fun.
So you had virtual reality in what year?
That would have been 96.
Okay. So now looking at virtual reality today, how does that compare? You're like the godfather of technology.
Okay, I'm going to put that on my LinkedIn.
You just need to get you a cat.
Right. So that was nice. It was still photographic, but you could only go like around, like in a circle or just a little bit up and down.
Yeah.
And at home, like I'm still like the things I like to play with, and the thing I like to play with most that involves technology is I have one of those Oculus we're on the door of doing something amazing with that. Mm-hmm. But you know what's weird? All these years, like this is, from 95 till now is 27, 8 years. Holy Jesus. We're not doing a ton with VR on that. I mean, we see it, like, we take it for granted that it's out there. At that time, it was a pain in the ass to get accomplished, and you were tons of fiddling with it. And now there's systems like Matterport that just, like, you go in and you hit a button and the whole room is scanned, and it is super. But you know what's weird is that from a customer experience, people aren't using it, and we're not super dependent upon it. Mm-hmm. I will say that at that time, I assumed that would be all over. If you would ask me in 95, what would happen in 2023 with a technology like that, I would have just assumed this is what the entire internet is going to be. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have shopping malls that you virtually walk through. But we don't. We're still weirdly, I think, mostly basing the internet on a metaphor from a Sears and Roebuck catalog. The people are still mentally modeling how you're going through information online, similar to flipping pages of the catalog. Mm-hmm. And a lot of, e-commerce or Domino's.com or JetPizza.com or whatever is, here's a page on this, and then you do a thing, usually in the lower right corner, that feels like the equivalent of this to flip to a new page. Yep. And I think those experiences, I don't exactly know how, I feel like I'm working on, with the AI technology that we have for our pizza ordering, is an example of, placing, we're using the internet, and air quoting is annoying, sorry, but we're using that to do something that's, that breaks this model of the page. And I think the ChatGPT stuff that's going on, I think these couple of technologies are probably going to fuse together to, I think, get people more comfortable and practiced at doing things that are on the internet to accomplish something or another that doesn't involve the page model that was and is still so familiar. This thing that goes back to the dawn of the printing press.
Yeah. Well, there's so much that I think from a blending of digital and physical that I thought would have already happened. Yeah. But I think even in CX, there's so many things we've talked about for 20 years that I'm still like, are we still talking about this? Because I don't see many people doing it. And so it's interesting to see kind of what latches on or not. And I had some predictions as we went into COVID of like, VR is going to obviously take off or these types of things. And there were still like areas where I'm like, oh, that's interesting that didn't really become a massive thing in comparison to what I thought it could be. Yeah. Like we have Oculus at home, but it's mainly my youngest playing Gorilla Tag. And he like works up a sweat downstairs. So I'm like, well, it's kind of a form of exercise. Yeah. But I thought it would be used for far different things, or even like you're saying, blending to have more immersive, experiential, happenings within sites, whether it's e-commerce or not, but something online where you can get pulled more into it and you feel the emotion and connectedness versus more static,
or make it more an analog to what you're having in real life, which that is a weird thing that like, and maybe I'll look back in like 10 more years and go, I was wrong then. Yeah. But at least like Facebook, as an example, is throwing a fudge ton of money towards building something that is analogous to real life. Yeah. And it's weird that with all these tools to make virtual, to make it anything. Now, granted, you can like, pick your character, so there's rules that don't apply. But I mean, the height, I think there's this weird thing going on where the height of technology, we keep aiming and innovating to figure out something to make it sort of more like what we already have in real life. Yeah. And I don't know that that's the right way to do it. I think the augmentation stuff that happens in places like the metaverse or that are going to happen as it mainstreams its way down to the point where my mom or dad, who are now the age of my grandparents were when they originally went to the porn site, that when they start using this, I don't know that they need the thing that's just like real life. You should be able to pick I think the happy compromise is going to be the ability to pick the best parts and have that be part of the overall experience for those guys. Yeah. Just replication is probably not going to, that can't be the end.
Like, it's one of the things where when I go to hockey games, all the other little kids will always sit by me and I'll talk to them, and all the parents are like, why don't all the kids come sit by you? I'm like, because they have the best ideas and most creative imaginations, because I think that they're not biased yet, because they're so in touch with just so much creativity. Because I always joke that because they haven't been burned by society yet. And so
they're not rooted in the pattern, and they're not. Yeah. They don't have taxes to pay, and so they don't have meals to prepare. Yeah. They're not responsible for anything. Yeah. So they have the luxury of venturing out. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's fun to see that. So like from a creative standpoint too, though, like what could be. I know we've had a lot of conversations around like what can go out there and what not, and. You know, I come up with a lot of creative ideas that generally you're pretty nice about responding to in ways that don't make me seem crazy. Like you still let my childlike curiosity come out. Like, you know, the one I think I told you about the Smello app where I'm like, when you have experiences like you go for a run in the morning, you smell fresh cut grass, or you have Thanksgiving dinner and you have the smell of that, or like how I actually thought of it was I was at a shoe store and I saw the jelly shoes popular again, and they have a smell that instantly brought back childhood memories with my sisters.
Jelly shoe has a smell?
Yeah. Okay. And I can't describe it. So I was trying to tell my sisters. I mean,
was pleasant relatively or just
it's
distinct?
Like strawberry meets plastic.
Okay.
I'm not, you know, it's close.
Okay.
But I was trying to.
I know that smell. Like, didn't they have those like little red haired doll things?
Like strawberry shortcake?
Yes. Yeah. Is that what it smelled like?
I had a strawberry shortcake bike.
Okay.
But it brought back all those memories because, you know, it's the ones, it's like one of the senses that you can't tie in to the digital world. And so I'm like, how can we do that? Because when you have that, you evoke all these emotions. And so I'm like, ooh, what if we had something where you could push scents to people as they have it? And then instantly I'm like, people are just going to send farts.
Yeah, that's
like, I was like, but you have a library of scents. But, you know, it's really just talking about like, what can you do to make experiences different or better, or something that's a surprise or delight or, you know, whatever. And so I know one of the things you've talked about before is when you were at Domino's, the tracker app, and just I loved hearing more about the vision for that. If you want to talk more about like that heartbeat and what you thought for that.
So tracker predates me. It existed before I got there, but I worked on it a lot. Like worked through some of the redesigning the skins and making it audibleized. The cultural relevance of that just rose a bunch. And I'd love to say that it was totally my idea, but it is not. But I did leverage it and expand upon it. But the steps where you go are so the reason you're at Tracker, the reason that it's valuable, is that you go through this e-commerce experience, and I don't know that it was exactly articulated this way in this zone, but you go through this e-commerce experience showing ooey gooey cheese, and you get so excited, and you're like, oh, you're someone who's probably really hungry or has kids that are hungry and they're tugging on pant legs, and you get them all excited, and then enough that they'll spend their hard-earned cash to get some Domino's pizza, which as a Jets guy now, why Domino's? Seriously, order some Jets. But the point is that this was then and now is now. The point, but you get to the
end. That was also an office moment, like looking at the camera for that one moment.
This is not.
I feel like it's a subliminal advertisement.
If you get this, I would like to make sure other people. Let's say my boss sees this. Jets pizza clearly better. But
those Sicilians, they really know.
They really do. You throw it on your hard-earned cash, and then the experience is dead air. At the time that the company, that you just put your faith in the company, I'm giving you some money, I want something. And the immediate feedback is silence for about 30 minutes. But with the tracker, you now get this order stays alive in your mind and in your heart. And the pattern that was explained to me by of the animation that was in the hot dog tracker was at the ad agency, they felt that it was like intentionally supposed to feel like a heartbeat, and they made it glow kind of like a heartbeat, because what they were doing was keeping that order alive in the mind until you were actually served a piece of pizza that you can have and tangibly hold and eat and smell and all those other decent things. If it would have been a Jets, it would have been a better experience.
But now you've transitioned too from like, how do you do it different now, right? Because between you were at Carhartt and then you went to Jets, and now you came up with the creative concept of how can I order pizza differently? Which isn't, I mean, you have a lot of options, but the text message, and I remember I got to be part of your beta test, which was kind of fun. I was like, I want pineapple. But I also purposely tried to mess the system up, so it's probably
that at that time.
Had data. But yeah, I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about the thought behind text message and like where that came from and then where you got it to?
Right. So when I got 4 years ago, I got to Jets, and in my assessment, they and this is not pejorative to say it, but they were guys who dearly loved pizza, but they probably hadn't gone in enough on tech and how it could be, and I think the staff was kind of small and didn't have necessarily the right background, and they came to that realization, and I was lucky enough for them to find me, and it's been such a lot of fun. But I got in and realized we kind of needed everything. We needed to redo our design language and our website and our store finder experience, and we needed a reason for people to feel the feels of a ordering experience that was as premium and quality as the product was. And if you don't know Jets, it's a higher end product. It's not that it probably costs double what Domino's does. Not that it's expensive. So it's not like a Chicago deep dish $50 pizza, but it's not a Little Caesars Domino's POS of that we're just ordering because of what I don't even know why anyway. But the point is, it's very good. Yeah. And we wanted technology that was as good as our product.
Yeah.
And so looking around, I met up with some guys that we had a kind of connection. They were doing something with databases and smart mailers, and they kind of had this concept like, hey, can we get text ordering going? I'm like, yep. And some of the influence I had over that side, so they went through like kind of this build phase to a launch. I think one of the more significant impacts I had on that is they were originally thinking this could be like a back and forth chatbot style thing where you're like, hey, what can I get you? I would like a pizza. Do you want anything more? Yes, I would like Coke, which had been done other times. It had been done not by me at Domino's, by someone else, and it had been done. And I still think that their product that's a crap product. It's not engaging, and I don't know the stats on it, but I would admit it's embarrassingly low usage relative to their other platforms. Which are fairly well done. I'm not going to knock all those things, but it's such a weird product. So in this one, what I insisted on is like, hey, let's do an A/B test and giving the customer a message that says, we want to do this all in one message. That you can say something like, in text, to the same phone number you could call, you would say, hey, I'd really like one of those super great pizzas and a Pepsi, and also can I have a Coke, and I'd like it delivered to 123 Main Street, ending on card, with the ending of, and here's my credit card information. And by baking it all into one message, it felt really fun and magical to enter your order and have it completed through the payment process in like 15 seconds. And in the A/B testing, when we started out, that was not necessarily a better conversion rate. The thing that people were familiar with was what was winning out. But we let it bake for a little while.
I like all the puns.
Yes, thank you. And they get when you see customers get to over that learning curve and into like the third and fourth order, the likelihood that they were going to order with the all-in-one message went up. And so that's what we stuck with the whole time. I'm a big believer that that's the way to do it, even though the system has a capability of going to the traditional back and forth analog of a human experience thing. That's not as fun. Just me blurting out to a computer what I want. And then accomplishing it really quickly is partly respectful of my time, but just fun. Yeah. So we keep it. And we've now done on the AI platforms for us. We've done maybe 115 million or so. I think we crossed 100 million in December or so. So it's a significant platform for us. It's
Because you do text message order. Like, what are the channels that you serve customers in for ordering?
Yeah. So you can call us like you could since 1978.
And you're calling local pizza shops, or is it okay?
Yeah, and I know you have some background with call centers and stuff like that, and that conversation is an active and alive conversation with us going back and forth. Like, hey, do we want to do this? Do we not? For pizza shops, it's made by someone local. And what are the societal implications of having the person that is on the other line not be there, or are they going to be all those things?
But you also do the voice AI stuff too, right?
Yeah. So you call, you can online order, you can text, you can originate in an app, but then you just go, but you're effectively reskinned into a responsive designed web page through an app. And then you can, now we have the phone bot where you call up, a computer voice says, hey, this is the Jetbot. I'm a super smart robot that can get you 15% off your pizza. Want to try it out? And when that customer says yes, they go, a robot says, what can I get you? You can say anything you'd like. And it's that same concept of just you tell me what you want and I'll do and the computer does the work to figure out what the orderable portion of that is. But compared to some brands, we're not mandating it, and we're currently offering the option to go back in and place the order in the store. And there are just some customers, and I know anecdotally people say it's going to be the older customers, and there's some truth to that, but it's all age ranges. Some people are tech progressive and they'll do it, but they'll still want to have a traditional order with their pizza people, or they like talking to Mike on the phone and they want to check in or ask specials or questions. They didn't think to
Or my teenagers are calling their friend at the pizza shop.
Does that happen?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I want to order through Jim. That's not really a kid name, but sorry to all the Jims out there. But like, I want to go and call my friend who works there to order my pizza instead of doing it if they know they're working. My kids will, or we'll go through McDonald's because their friends work in the drive-through, or whatever it is. Yeah, well, it's kind of fun. Plus, they mess with them a little bit.
And that's respect. So, like, you ordered McDonald's or wherever you were, and it didn't come to me, I would be offended if I knew my friend was in the drive-through and didn't say anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then, how does that look like when you look at the channel? So the voice, like the chat, Jetbot for the voice.
Jetbot, right?
Jetbot. That is done in the same manner where you ask the question, they can do the full order just like text messaging.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want to say.
And was that done by design that potentially they'll overlap or cross channel? Sometimes they might order text or they might order voice, or that was just, you think the flow? Like, how did you come up with thinking that's the right flow for both channels?
So the subtlety is that when PhoneBot, we did not necessitate all doing it in one order. Okay. The system is capable of it, so you can blurt out everything you want to say.
Okay.
Or you have a little bit of a follow-up. Additionally, we felt that it was acceptable in a phone experience to do things that are beneficial to the store, like ask for an upsell. Matter of fact, that's one of the reasons that is so powerful as an economic piece of a store's technology mix. Because that 19-year-old kid that is stereotypically in your pizza store, or 15 or whatever he is, or he or she, that employee, which pizza just skews younger, they're not always going to remember and well execute asking for an upsell. But the computer is always going to remember and do it the same way every single time. At Friday at 5:00 on Payday Friday in places where that's a huge impact to the store, it is frenetic. It is it's a chaotic environment, and you will hear the stress in people's voice. The PhoneBot is the same super positive tone no matter when you call. If there are 1,000 orders going on, it is still going to be the same tone, and you remove the negative part of the human element from that. And really, I think this is just worth mentioning because I'd love to juxtapose the two concepts here. Someone could jump and say, "Hey, aren't you taking someone's job?" We cannot find enough. And if anyone's seeing this and you would like a job in Jet's Pizza, I guarantee you just walk in your store like, "Hey, I would like to work here." And they will probably say, "You're hired immediately." Because we need more people. So this is the thing it's really a pressure relief to have this in the store. And I think the most fun part for that stereotypical 19-year-old kid that's in that store is making the pizza. The humans are always going to be the harder part.
Yeah. Well, but to your point too, so coming from like an outsourcing CX background, one of the hardest things to manage is peak demand. Yeah. So like, let's say it's a Friday at 4 or 5 o'clock. If you have Jetbot who can manage, I don't know scalability, but 1,000 orders at the same time where a human can only manage one at a time and they have to move through the queue, then you're also, like you're saying from the experience, I'd add to what you're saying to just say, as a human, I'm much happier that I haven't been on hold for 20 minutes to order my pizza, because I might in 20 minutes decide, I'll just do something at home instead if they're really backed up at the store versus if you can get right through.
Realistically?
And I keep doing this, by the way, where my kids do this. Oh, okay. I don't know if you played around with that, but kids are very different in how they
hold their phone? Yeah. It's a more thing.
Yeah. I'm basically showing them old.
Realistically, from a total profit perspective, your customers, our pizza's good, but it's not, for many, it won't be sit on hold for 20 minutes good. That's just an expectation for some.
Yeah.
This is, I know for a fact, saving us sales for people who would have otherwise hung up the phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then kind of transitioning to, you've come up with some of these concepts. They've taken off.
Yeah.
The one question I'd have is like, how do you then, one thing I would think it would be a challenge is how do you then tie to marketing? So a lot of times, like, it's what's the special of the day, or like, do you have any coupons, or are you doing like a 2-for-1, or they're free breadsticks, or whatever it is?
Yeah.
How do you do that, or are the people who are ordering smart enough they've already done research before they get there?
I've thought long and hard on that one, and I think there's a 60% chance I've gotten it right, no higher than that. We have existing marketing flows. There's direct mailers and Facebook ads and all the things that a modern company would have to get messages out about specific deals. But from a tech perspective, and even from a consumer perspective, I feel some negativity towards the restrictions of a coupon. Coupons can have guardrails, and you're not really telling people when you get a coupon, you're not probably statistically getting what you want. You're getting what's available on the coupon if you're dedicated to that person. So I'm a big proponent of the system remaining with a fixed price discount. So it's like a 15% discount. And what that in part facilitates is that every customer is getting exactly what they want and they feel confident in having a deal. In the future, would we maybe have to shift that? Maybe we'll continuously look at the economics of it.
Yeah.
But for now, the system is capable of putting a coupon, but we don't see it that often. And I'm not motivated to go make a big deal to communicate to the customers that you can go get this restrictive thing. Sometimes the pricing is the relative discount rate on a coupon is deeper than the 15%. Which also from a business perspective gives you a little bit of extra margin built into every order. If all the tickets on there have a 4% difference compared to a coupon order, and a coupon order would happen like 80 or 90% of the time because that's what the world expects out of pizzas, that you get a coupon. So there's even some cost benefit to us, and the customer gets what they want. They feel like they got a good deal. They didn't have to make any restrictions. It also shrinks the amount of time that it takes to get through the ordering process, which has a direct impact on overall conversion.
Well, and I think I would lean in and agree more on that side, just from a marketing perspective. I don't like when I go to new sites and they're like, oh, you're new. If you order, you get 10 to 15% off. Or I know that there's codes or coupons out there, but I don't have them. Or I got something in the mail that I could clip or do something. And I'm like, why do I have to have stuff that you've advertised, especially if I'm already a customer in some cases? Like, why do I actually get punished for being an existing customer versus getting a sweet deal if I'm a new customer? And so I actually would think that's better. Yeah. So I'd probably move your number up a little bit than 60%, just because I think if there's true like honesty and transparency, and we're always going to give you the best deal, you don't have to have these other special things that you need to be paying attention to clip out or whatever else. Because I mean, let's be honest, even if it's clipping physically, I'm doing the air quotes now. Yes. Clipping physically or from the website or whatever, I mean, then you can feel confident that you're ordering and you're getting the best deal. Because that's the worst when you're like, oh, someone else got this for $20 and I'm paying $30. Like, I got ripped off. Like, does the pepperoni taste that much better? No. But it does taste better if you think you paid less for it.
It does. Yeah. There's a weirdly, because there's a pride aspect to that. And even like, if I have and hopefully will have, if I had $100 billion in the bank, I still want the coupon because I feel like it's an us versus them mentality when I'm ordering anything. It's just, no, I would rather spend, even like, go down to your local sporting goods shop. I would rather leave that money in my will to my children than give it to Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever.
Especially if like, oh, I know there's a coupon for this, like 20% off, dang it, I didn't bring it with me.
Well, and I feel, tell me if you feel this too, I think that is the cause of hesitation for ordering. And I want to grease away. The moment you're thinking pizza, I want you to go, and Jet's going to be here in 15 seconds, I can get this ordered. Yeah.
Well, and not just that. So I also use now Microsoft Edge as one of my browsers. And it instantly does the whole, like, I used to go to...
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I roll intentionally?
Yeah. I don't care what you think on this one, because I use it. Here's why. Listen, if I'm shopping, I use Edge. Yeah. Because I don't have to go to Retail Me Not or any of those coupon sites if I'm going to do like, I know I'm going to spend a lot of money on swimsuits, or I'm going to go buy this, or I'm going to go buy that. And so instead, I do it through Microsoft Edge, because it instantly will scan the web and place any coupons in your basket that it can think of.
Yes. Everyone who heard you say that's a technologist, is going to say the same thing. They're like, yeah, that's an extension in Chrome as well that probably predated Edge and probably works way better because it was not made by Microsoft.
Probably.
They might say it. I'm not going to say that. That would be rude to call you out right in front of you, so I will not
Actually,
say
this
anything
is a very
like
open conversation, so I'd like to be re-educated or educated on something that
It's a Google Chrome extension.
Oh, well.
So you have options. Look at that. You just went from thinking there was only one option. Your world is
No, I actually use 3 browsers, but it's probably based on whatever is most habitual. So it's like on my phone, it's default something else. And so, it's actually just keeping my mind exploring other options.
This is going to make me sound like an old dude, and we've already established I was in college 28 years ago.
Well, I use the phone thing.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it.
So Chrome is my favorite.
Okay.
I'm just saying Edge does all
Anyone
the
who's done developing, I don't think any developer out there who's ever had to run some code, it's going to take a long time before they go, yes, I will intentionally use a Microsoft product.
Yeah, I know.
But
I mean, there's much to be desired with all of it.
Your background is not, you have so many great backgrounds, but it's not, you don't have a development background. So I think you've not been jaded. There's a good chance I'm just a Chrome fan guy because of that,
no, Chrome is way better. But when I was running project management and go to market for an app development that we were doing within one of the BPOs I worked for, so we were building like an omni-channel platform.
Yeah.
And we had 2 development teams, one in Boston and one in Denver. And I'm sure you're already thinking like, okay, it's going to get interesting. And then our architects were in another place. Oh. Those were border meetings where I was holding men by collars who were trying to fist fight. Wow. And I didn't know the background to know, like, is this good code or not? And the APIs, they weren't developing anywhere near each other. They were just like all over the place. But I remember specifically in a meeting, that one of the developers was like, wait, you wanted this to be on Internet Explorer too, the newest version? I was like, do I have to tell you these things? Like, what is happening? Like, I do not know the newest and latest technologies or the old ones that we need to maintain that you need to build on. And that was back when first, like, the apps were just starting to be developed and it was still new. Yeah. But I just remember looking at him being like, wait, is that my response? And I think that's where you have challenges in tech requirements and some of that development too, right?
I guarantee that guy's felt the pain. I know that pain.
Well, I wanted to give him pain because I was so mad at him.
You're right. He could have handled that better from a communication standpoint.
Yeah.
Because he's expected to know that.
He's lucky I'm very emotionally stable, that I did not want to fight him, that I broke up fights instead of wanting to punch him in the head that day.
Okay.
Not that I'm a violent person, but it was more of his response. Okay. So anyway, so kind of going back, so you have these, so what's on the horizon then? Like, if you're talking to people about how do you drive innovation in your companies, new tech, especially when you're thinking about how does that impact customers and better ways, how do you bring that lifehood to a customer experience with people using technology? Like, what are your kind of thoughts on where things are headed?
Yeah, so I think even just being critical of how the areas of opportunity that we have not fully maximized, we will need to do a better job of infusing traditional marketing efforts with the tech stuff. Mm-hmm. I think some of that comes with trust, which I think we're probably 7 innovations deep and a couple $100 million in incremental revenue. Those are trust building things if you're running a pizza company. So I think we've earned the trust and we're getting better about doing those integration things. But I mean, we'll probably still be relying upon some traditional marketing stuff.
Sure.
And those will filter out to consumers. The other thing that I think happens that I think when I'm talking to other people that mention like, oh, I was at Domino for a little while, because they get a moniker of having been, I think a little bit more having been previously a very innovative company, is that it raises, because it's such a big name brand and so many people have used it. Yeah. It's raised the bar on consumer expectations, and we will continue to see a differentiation for brands at a P&L level for who embraced technology and who didn't. It's no longer an option. It's no longer a gimmick. It is the tech. These pieces of tech and AI are things that you have to do to be in the modern commerce space. Mm-hmm. Not optional.
Yeah. And so you've talked a little bit about, like, if I'm someone listening, how do I tactically say to someone internally, like, how do you get the buy-in, or how do you look and say, are we truly innovative, or how do we prove that out?
Yeah. So, an interesting thing I was reading, I was at this conference in Vegas last week, and we were talking about that very topic, and a really cool stat came up that if you want to ask your company, if you want to figure out, has my company been innovative over the past 5 years? A great way to check it out is talk to your CFO and see what % of the overall budget was spent for R&D. Mm-hmm. And if you look, and realistically, all you spent money on were rollouts and legacy costs, you're probably not being innovative if you aren't spending some % of your budget. Now, I don't know what the magic number is. I think someone in the room over there said, I think it should be 10%. And there's a lot of head nodding. So maybe it's 10%. Yeah. But either way, you can proportionally look at it and say, hey, if this element is missing, and if innovation is a necessity for continuously staying competitive with the Joneses in the business world, or from like a consumer perspective, you gotta put money into R&D. And what's interesting is, if you had a number in mind that seemed reasonable, like 10% of your overall budget should be in R&D, it's probably not just software count. It's probably headcount too. I think the thing that is a struggle for all companies with, as it relates to R&D, is that it's hard to get that approval through HR when you're like, here, we're going to research and develop something, and they're like, okay, well, so we're going to make how much money off this? Yeah. And if you're being honest, the answer is probably somewhere between negative 100% and positive 10,000%. You have no idea. You gotta roll with that trust. But if you zoom out and look and say everyone's doing it, all the cool kids are doing it, then realistically, about if it's 10%, then 1 in 10 head count should probably be dedicated to functions of R&D.
So wrapping things up a little bit, but I want to ask you a question first, which is one thing we like to ask people. And so the theme is always stay wild. So how do you stay wild in your life now? Like looking back, previously sending porn to your grandparents, like now, like what are your hobbies, or like what's something that people don't know about you, or something that you infuse into your life that is something that really excites you or you're passionate about outside of like the, tech industry and some of that?
What you're seeing here is someone saying, what is okay to document?
Everything. That's why it's CX&Chill. This is a raw, unfiltered podcast.
I think it's fair to say that as a 40-something dude with great kids, that that the spectrum of wild has been tamped down by life. But for me, wild would probably be, I don't know that I can even claim that doing, working on my deck and building stuff, or needlessly scrolling through a million interior design videos to pick out a new piece of, a new paint color or a new wall thing. I like working on my own space. I think what's weird is I didn't value my house. I didn't value the sense of home as much prior to COVID, but the force to be home raised the value in it, raised the emotional value of it. So I tend to focus on that. I'm not really, except for the occasional like whiskey fused night. Yeah. I don't think I have a wild streak in me at the moment.
But maybe wild is looking at paint colors and doing the deck. I mean, things change as an adult, and it can still be fun, but wild, maybe it looks a little bit different.
All right, how about this? It seems reasonable. If you have the stones to ask someone that question, maybe you should answer it first.
That will be on an additional podcast later.
That doesn't seem fair. I think this is a moment to be called out for honesty. Oh. We've talked recently about how
I stay wild as I raise 3 teenage boys, and I just try to keep my head on my shoulders and not go crazy. They're all great kids, so I know I'm going to force them to listen to this, and they'll probably roll their eyes. That's usually trapped in my car because then they can't leave, and they can't walk out of the room. But I think it's more of just, I love to travel, and I think it's fun to, I love having, I think what I like to do is have really wild conversations with people where we can talk about things that maybe a 5-year-old would talk about, or maybe an 80-year-old would talk about, but just really creative, imaginative things that who knows if it's possible or not, but I think that's for me what I like to do.
An alternate version, because wild could be like, we're in a tropical. It's not like a Girls Gone Wild kind of a wild. That's not the wild I'm leaving.
Like waking up in the jungle after a bender, you don't even know where you are, and you have to be like Survivor. Like that sounds really crazy, and that sounds exciting, but for me that sounds really tiring.
Probably I think the version of wild that is appropriate for people who are like maybe someone has a mortgage or paying taxes or needs to be responsible or something like that. Yeah. I think I don't recommend doing anything that, prevents you from doing that. And if that's I'm not judging if that's the life you're leading, whatever. But I think staying childlike, back to the ability to continuously innovate or at least dream up something that is what you would do if you didn't have the confines of life that, give you gray hairs and pizza bellies and stuff like that. Keeping yourself flexible enough to do that is really important. Yeah. And I try real hard to do that, which is a weird way to justify being super fucking immature sometimes.
Well, I am immature. I live life off of sarcasm and sexual innuendos, but I don't really think that's wild. That's just my natural upbringing, thanks to my Irish father.
Yeah, I guess my Irish background, maybe it's a blood thing.
Yeah, maybe. But thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
See you guys at the next episode. We're thankful that you guys keep watching, and we'll have more about figuring out more of the staying wild with everyone else.
And that's our show. CX&Chill is a production of XOStudios, the creative marketing arm of XtendOps, with today's host, Stephanie Todd, Executive producer Sean McCreary. Producers David Spear, Clarissa Coronado, and Memo Davalos. Editors and videographers Carlos Alfonso and Santiago Aguirre. Graphic support from Jordan Madrid. And social media guru Claudia Corona. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out next time for more CX and Chill.